Hey Elyson, we're back for another entrepreneur interview. Here we talk about different people's stories as they got their businesses started. We interview people who live here in Elyson, they're your neighbors, and they own a business, and we get to learn a little bit about their story. How did they get started? What do they do? So on and so forth. We've got a number of other people that we've interviewed as well. If you're talking to a neighbor, talking to a friend, and you want to refer one of those previous interviewees and give them a recommendation to a friend, go onto our YouTube channel. You'll find a number of them all out there. Feel free to share and support local. The whole point of this is really to support local businesses, get the word out there, and help local businesses here in Elyson grow. So be a neighbor, be a friend. But today, we get to meet Shelly Khanna and get to learn a little bit about SK Design.
That's correct.
So Shelly, I know you as an interior designer, making homes a better place, making home feel like home, not taking the brick and mortar and making it have a feeling and expression, right? But tell us, who is Shelly?
Yeah.
How did you get started in your business with the SK Design, and how did you end up in Elyson?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I'll start with how we started, or how we landed in Elyson. About 3 years ago, my husband and I were just having a conversation. We realized we were so exhausted with the winters in Jersey.
Cold winters.
It was cold, dark, 10 months out of the year. And we just craved being closer to family too, so we decided to take the leap. He's got a ton of family down here, so we decided to take the leap.
Come on down.
Exactly. Warmer weather, more time spent outdoors with family.
Awesome.
I mean, it just seemed like a good idea.
And do they live here in Elyson too?
They don't. They live a good 30 minutes away. I feel like that's
healthy distance.
Healthy
family
distance, exactly.
Yeah.
So we're happy to be down here. I mean, it was definitely the right move for our family.
Okay, great.
But, you know, our first home was, we bought during COVID, and that was in Jersey. And so I started an Instagram page just to kind of document our home journey, how I set it up. And so I started to gain some followers that way. I had people reaching out about, you know, links for things or how I did things, and it kind of just evolved from there. I realized what I thought was common knowledge really wasn't as common as I thought.
Okay. You had a natural feel for design and a natural feel for layouts and things.
Yeah, I realized I had an eye for things, but it's not just about aesthetics, you know what I mean? Like as a mom, you know, as someone who has a family, a lot of my design is tailored about how to make spaces functional as well as beautiful.
Nice.
We can all appreciate something that looks great in a magazine, but if it doesn't serve your life,
if it doesn't work,
it doesn't work. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I think good design, a really, really important part about good design is that it supports how you live. And so that's kind of the philosophy that I bring into the work that I do. It's how I set up my home to make sure that I had points of storage, but also, you know, something that made us feel a certain way, like evoke emotion. Like you walk into the living room, you feel calmness. You go into your office, you feel, okay, calm, but also space to focus and get your work done. So I you know, it's really tailored, how I approach design is really tailored to how people serve their lifestyles. And so, but going back to how I got started, so the Instagram page just sort of evolved.
Going from there.
Yeah, it just kind of went from there, from our small first starter home to our what will hopefully be our forever home. And so folks just continue to reach out. It's a good source of where I get a lot of my leads too.
That's awesome. So you started in Jersey, right?
Yes.
Were you working when you started, or what was that like?
Yes, yes. So this was not always my career.
Okay, so what did you do before?
Yeah, I started in HR.
Okay.
I was working a corporate job, and I thought that was my destiny for the rest of my life, you know, being at my desk.
Interesting.
I never imagined I would be pursuing the more creative pursuits, but so I was working for PwC before I got pregnant, and once I had my son, I realized I just wanted a bit more flexibility with my job.
And PwC is fairly large, right? Like how many employees do they have roughly?
A lot, probably over 200,000.
200,000 employees working in HR, so you're probably a cog in a very large HR organization.
Yes, yes.
And dealing with a lot of structure, and I've never worked HR, but I would imagine it's quite different from interior design.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
It is, but at the same time, I've taken a lot of, I had a long career in retail. You know, my father was a business owner, so I worked a lot of retail in his stores. And, you know, even HR, it's customer service, but your employees are the customer. You know, dealing with issues and stuff like that, you know, putting out fires, managing emotions, which is very, very similar to what you do when you walk into someone's home and you're helping them set it up. You're dealing with, it's a very emotional based job, right? Because people are very emotionally invested in their homes and how it turns out. So, you know, managing people's emotions, it's very, very similar. I've taken a lot of what I've done in my corporate career and my career prior to corporate into my job now.
So it did transfer over some valuable
100%.
Good.
100%.
Yeah, no, interesting. So you were working in HR. Tell us maybe about your first job. What was your first job? Who was it? How did you find them? And how did you end up working in interior design?
Oh, okay. I was going to say, gosh, my first job. I'm like, I need to think back a bit. So my first job was... truthfully, I started informally a few years before I officially registered the business. So my first jobs was working for friends and family.
Okay.
And they were some of the funnest, you know, jobs that I worked on because it was so collaborative. And I had, you know, inside knowledge into how these people lived. So as much as when we sit down for, you know, discovery calls with my clients, and I'm like, okay, tell me about what's working, what's not. I think some people, until you've seen how people move through their home, you don't quite fully know.
Understand it, yeah.
Exactly, which is why, you know, a lot of the work I do is virtual, but I do like to get into people's places and see how they're really using their space. But nevertheless, my first job was working for friends and family, and one of my favorite projects, and I think we talked about this, was that New York loft I worked on.
Okay.
Because I had complete... creative freedom.
Tell us about it, right? Like what did you end up doing basically? And what did they hire you for?
So this was, it was a bachelor pad. It was my cousin living in New York. He had just moved from the Netherlands.
Oh, wow.
And he had an awesome place in the heart of New York, you know, a 2-bedroom, amazing outdoor space. So we really had to do it from top to bottom because he wasn't bringing any furniture with him.
Okay.
The reality is that he, you know, he was a true dude. He didn't know what he needed.
Yeah. My wife reminds me quite regularly that I need some structure and style too.
Yeah. And so it really meant explaining to him how we want to set up a living space, how we want to set up his bedroom, you know, why we maybe don't want his office set up in his bedroom, because you need to disconnect from work. As someone who has a very stressful job, don't put your desk in your office. You've got another bedroom, let's set it up for that.
Okay.
You know, it really sort of fundamentally came down to figuring out how the space is going to work, and then we injected the creative elements. And because, like I said, he gave me sort of creative freedom, so we got to do some fun things in that space.
Cool.
Especially the outdoor space. We made it like this green oasis.
Okay.
You know, we tried to bring indoor elements out by doing like a large sectional seating. You know, we did sort of a storage coffee table, so we could still hide things away because there wasn't like a lot of storage outside, as you can probably imagine. But we made it cozy so that his place ended up being a place where him and his friends wanted to hang out, as opposed to going out.
Very good.
You know, to restaurants and things like that. And that, for me as a designer, that speaks volumes. That makes me feel like I've done my job.
Sure.
That you feel like, okay, hosting at your place is better than going out.
It's improved lifestyle, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so you mentioned something there, like he kind of let you do what you wanted to do there.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. Like why, how do you see that maybe working differently than some other situations you've had? Maybe they have very specific things in mind, or what does that look like from an interior designer perspective? Because I'm sure you get everything in between, right? Some people are just like, take my problem away. And other people might be like, I want this, this, and this.
Yes.
And where is it you kind of provide the most value and bring that touch?
So, I mean, we talked about kind of creating functional spaces, but a big part of design is also creating cohesive spaces.
Okay.
So sometimes when we're bringing elements of, the client's existing furniture into the design,
Okay.
sometimes it can feel a little bit hodgepodge because you're trying to put together design styles that don't typically go together. Yeah, okay. And some of their pieces might be a little dated, or maybe it just doesn't serve the space because it's not functional. You know what I mean? It doesn't fit. Maybe you have a large sectional, and it doesn't fit the space that you're working in. So we had, being that it's a New York loft, while it was spacious in height, but not in the floor plan itself. So we had to create space and create the feeling of spaciousness through design. And so some of the ways we did that was making sure that you didn't have the furniture too close to the ground. So leaving some space for just light and air to pass. Okay. That makes a space feel more larger. Yeah. And a lot of people think, oh, I have a small space, so let me buy small furniture. Not always true.
Oh, really?
Sometimes you want to maximize with the pieces you have. So obviously it should be appropriately sized, but whatever you think it is, sometimes it needs to be a bit bigger. Yeah. That gives you this feeling of spaciousness. So, I mean, it came together great. He loves it. It looked phenomenal.
Yeah. It's interesting. You always see, like, scrolling through Facebook, sometimes those little designs, it's like, find the square, and you're looking and it looks like everything is squares, but when you look closer, it's not a square. It's like an optical illusion almost, right? Or whatever it be. And or the straight lines, right? And so, similar in design, I'm sure some things just don't always make sense, but they follow maybe a flow or a line.
And flow is something that people don't think about, but and I do like to incorporate feng shui into design, but because I do think things. Design evokes emotion, color evokes emotion. It's how you feel in your space. You may not realize it, but it does. And so, if you have like large pieces of furniture by an entry or exit point, probably not a good thing to do. Or if you have a lot of square, heavy pieces of furniture in your space, it's gonna be hard to maneuver around, which is why balance. There's some elements of design, right? You have cohesiveness, you have balance, your color palette, all those things kind of come together. And I think that's what kind of working with a designer, the value that we bring is that we'll look at how you live, but then also how you want to live.
Got it.
Yep. You know what I mean? And kind of bring it together.
Bring it all together. Yeah, that's good. I for sure don't have that skill. I know my wife is definitely much more skilled in that area, right? But to me, I see function, and then the design suffers, right? And so a lot of people can benefit from obviously bringing that into their lives, right?
Yeah, and that was also a really important thing for me too, is I wanted to make sure that the work that I did was accessible. So the plans that I offer and my pricing, I ensure that I have packages available for people of all budgets so that anyone can benefit from good design. That was really important to me because when we first set up our first home, I didn't have a major budget. And so some of it took a little bit of creativity. And even now, sometimes you don't want to blow your budget on some smaller projects. You just want to give it a quick little update. And so that's where good design comes in, right? Is we make sure that the money that you do spend is spent wisely so that you're not making mistakes and poor.
To meet the purpose and the desire. So talk to me about this maybe when you're talking to a new client, right? Because I've never worked with a designer necessarily in my home. How do you maybe get to know them a little bit to figure out, like, do we need to move a wall or just add a different color couch, or what do we need to do functionally to the room to make it designed right? How do you get to know them and draw that out initially?
So there's a few things I'll do. I mean, first I want to know who lives in the house. Do you have kids? How old are they? Do you have pets? How often are you home? Are you guys homebodies? Are you active? A lot of your lifestyle choices will tell me a lot. You know, where do you guys typically lounge? Do you guys hang out in the main living area, or is it formal? Do you host a lot? All those things will tell me a lot about your lifestyle and how you use your spaces.
I see. Interesting. And maybe they have a desire to become different, but functionally the home doesn't serve the purpose to host or to whatever. Yeah, interesting.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good.
Absolutely. And even with, a lot of people will bring some aspirational photos, like, oh, I love this space, this is what I want.
I see.
But it takes asking further questions. Like, yes, pictures speak 1,000 words, but what is it about those photographs that you like? Because there's elements, right, that they might want to infuse. It might not be everything once you start digging a little bit deeper. And so I think, and that's why, yes, over the phone is great, but I love to just walk in. I personally I'm an extrovert. I want to get in. I'm nosy. I want to get into your house. I want to know. People, invite me into your home.
Understand them. Yeah,
let me see what you do in here.
Great. Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
And then from there, you maybe take this back and kind of mull it over with your notes and come back with a plan to present, or how does that? How does that go?
So we'll do our initial consult, and our initial consult, in terms of, if I'm assuming we're talking about process, so my initial consult will decide if our styles work well together, right?
Fit? Yeah.
Yeah. Do we fit? Are we going to have a good working relationship? And it goes both ways, right?
Yeah.
Like, they have to decide if I'm the best person for them. And it's just like when you're choosing a contractor, right? You'll talk to a few folks.
Sure.
So after that initial consult, we'll set up that the deeper discovery call, and I'll ask them to bring their inspiration photos with them. I am an speaking off the cuff kind of person, so sometimes I like to shoot ideas as we're having that discovery call, just to kind of get a feeler for what they think of.
It's like, okay, not that.
Exactly, because with all my designs, I'll offer an opportunity for revision, but sometimes I want to throw some ideas at them to kind of see how it lands with them. So it kind of helps refine the picture a bit. But yes, I will, go home, take those ideas, do a little bit of research, let the ideas marinate, and that's when I start to kind of get into the creative stuff. So depending on, the plan that family or individual selected, we'll do floor plans, color palette, furniture selection, decor, all of it, and we'll put it together. In some cases, I'll do a 3D rendering if that's a service that they want to pay for. But it's not always needed, and I'll tell people up front, while it's nice to have, it's not always needed. If you're not doing anything structural, it's not required.
But I imagine that gives them maybe a little less guesswork in terms of seeing what it is. Like, I know I'd like to see it, maybe to like.
That's a good point.
It's just a better feel for what am I going to get, right? Like, because I maybe have a harder time visualizing some things, whereas my wife probably can really visualize it really easy, right?
That said, concept boards, I put together concept boards where I'll layer the furniture together, and that's included in all of the services. That'll give you a pretty good, clear idea of how things will look together. You may not see it in a 3D format. It'll be just a 2D format.
Interesting.
So you'll still get an idea of how things will work together.
Simple way to do it, not as intense.
Exactly.
The job done. Good. Very good. Interesting. So then, so now you have a design, you have an idea. Yeah, we want to do this. What are maybe the more tactical things you do to help get to there? Do you get into project management, contractor management, and all that kind of stuff, or what all do you do?
That's a good question. So I work, like I said, I worked with clients with all kinds of budgets, but all sorts of appetites for DIY work. Some people do want to do it themselves. They enjoy it. They just need creative direction. And so that's where I do have a package where I just offer the creative concept, and I provide them with all the links that they need, and I'll provide them with some virtual support as well. And then they run with it.
They go.
And then there's some clients that need, they don't want to lift a finger. They're like, okay, I love everything, you do it all. And I love those because that's where I get to troubleshoot. Because as much as everything we look at online looks beautiful when it arrives, things can be different.
And then you got to deal with it.
Exactly. And that's where in real time I can deal with it. And I can find either problems or I can find alternatives. And so, I do have packages that support different appetites of people. So those who just want to be hands off, those who need a bit more hand holding, or people who want to completely take the reins and manage it all. They just need the creative direction.
Great. No, that's awesome. and that's good to hear, for sure. So you started back in Jersey, correct?
Yes.
And your work in design, doing some of that stuff. You moved here in what year was it?
22.
22,
yeah.
Okay. And then were you already running full time with your business, or not quite yet?
No. I was still, like I said, I was pretty committed to my corporate job. I was taking some work on the side informally. Yeah.
So how did you do that? I mean, moving from states, a lot of it's, I imagine it's word of mouth. Is that kind of the primary source of business, or?
Yeah. So the first source of business is probably my Instagram page, is probably where a lot of people find me and say, hey, I love how you set up your place. Would love to do the same thing in my own. Or I love your style. I'd like to do that in my space. Funny enough, I've actually found some commercial clients that way, where they're like, oh, I want my Airbnb to feel that way or something like that. So, so yes, Instagram, social media has been a great way to connect with people, but networking, meeting people. I've offered free consults for a while now. So if they're nearby, I can pop into your home. And then for folks that are a little bit farther out, I offer it over the phone. Unless they want to pay me to travel, I can certainly do that. And so, that's been probably my primary sources of leads. I do use some other means as well, so Thumbtack, Angie's List, things like that as well, to connect with people I wouldn't ordinarily be in my immediate circle.
And do you find those to be fairly effective, or have you learned anything kind of along the way with those lead sources? How does that work?
I'm still getting a feel for it. While it's great, Thumbtack's been great for sending leads, it's not always curated to your style. As we all know, sometimes it's not going to be a good fit, and that Thumbtack doesn't leave a lot of room for that. So I'm still figuring it out. I'm playing out with their system to see if it's something that I'll continue to use.
For sure. It's always a testing thing. You got to test it, right? You kind of have to rule it out and say, is this going to work or not? Prove to me it doesn't work and before you leave it, right? I know I've tried PPC, I've tried tons of different things. And put a lot of money into those things, and sometimes they just don't pay you back, right? So
I mean, advertising is part of the job. So I'm any business really, right? So I'm looking at it that way. Probably going to be looking at putting in some advertising dollars into Google as well, see how that works out, right? It's just a bit of trial and error to figure out what works.
Absolutely, tweaking it and learning as you go. Right?
Exactly.
So great. And then when did you go full time from your W-2?
So I returned from my mat leave, and shortly after, my company did a pretty large reduction of workforce. And, I took some time to spend with my son. And in that time, I picked up, again, through social media, I picked up a couple of clients. And I'm like, gosh, I really love this. I really, when your heart just you feel like, okay, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I had that moment.
Right?
I had that moment. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to throw myself into it. I'm going to bet on myself and give it a shot. And, the practical side of you is like, oh, is this the right thing?
Is it wise? You're leading a secure career.
Exactly. Something that has a steady paycheck every 2 weeks. You think about this, especially once you become a parent, right? You realize, okay, I need to make sure that my child is financially, secure. And so there was a lot of second guessing. I think there still is, and especially when you're stepping so outside of your primary, your career, what you've been doing for over 10 years. I think all of us have a moment of imposter syndrome, right? Imposter syndrome, sorry. Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Should I be doing this? Am I crazy? I think we all have those moments, and they still creep up, and you have to push it down. No. And I think, a big part of it is just, it's how you speak to yourself. And I think as I'm raising my son, I want to raise him to also pursue things that he is passionate about, and I have to lead by example.
And to show him like, hey, I can step out and do
Yeah.
this. Yeah, that's awesome to see.
If you're willing to put in the hard work, you will be good at whatever you do.
Yeah. So what is it that you are drawn to specifically with this business design that fuels you to suppress those thoughts, right? Like pop up on the career side of things?
I think so. In my HR career, you know, I was a very small part of a very large system. Yep. And so, yes, it was satisfying to solve, you know, employee problems and see them go off and get promoted and live these great lives. But I was only a small part of where they were in their career. And there was a point where I offered my help and then I backed off and, you know, I had to hand over that work to someone else, you know, because a big part of my role was, you know, recruitment. It was training, you know, getting them onboarded. And so once all of that was done and we set them up for their, you know, whatever it was, so maybe their promotion, maybe it was setting them, after that, I really was hands off. And so the neat part about what I do is that it is so personal, and I'm really moved by sometimes some people's stories, you know, probably similar to you, right? I'm sure you enjoy learning people's stories.
Absolutely.
And I think it's such an integral part of what we crave as humans is connection. And so, you know, meeting people, understanding their life, what brought them to where they are, how I can help them lead an easier life at home, you know, because some people, they walk in and they don't feel relaxed.
They're not at home.
Because, you know, they've got a bunch of stuff in boxes, their home isn't serving them, it's working against their lifestyle. Right. And so it's so gratifying, you know, being able to see that end result. Yeah. You know, being able to solve problems that I know will help them, help their kids, help them enjoy their home. Like, that is so satisfying to me. And then as a bonus and perk, I get to create these beautiful spaces. Like, you know, it's a win-win.
Yeah. So for you, I could see it's like the memories at home really go deep, probably for you, for your upbringing, so on and so forth. And being able to create that and see that in other people's families is much more fulfilling. You provide more of an impact maybe than fulfilling payroll or addressing a complaint, right?
Exactly.
And working that. So cool. Very awesome. So what kind of projects do you have maybe going on right now? Anything specific that's exciting that you'd like to share about?
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually one project I'm very excited about. We're going to be breaking ground next month. And so I connected with this sweet old lady who was she's starting fresh, you know, unfortunately her husband passed away, kids live a little far away, so she needs a home that needed minimal work and whatever work that it did require, you know, she didn't want to do any of it. So after she moved in, she reached out to me, we connected. She let me know it's a beautiful home, but it's very builder grade. It's your standard white kitchen, white walls, white everything.
I see.
And she wants to add some of that old world charm. Sure. And so that's what we're doing. We're doing some really exciting projects. So we're putting in a limestone fireplace. Okay. Putting in arches throughout the home. Sure. Again, to speak to a different time. We're doing some built-in cabinets. We're, you know, one of the things we also decided together was she doesn't host a lot. She doesn't have a ton of family nearby, so she didn't need a dining room and a breakfast nook. So we're converting the breakfast nook into a library. Okay, awesome. Which is so cool, and we'll have one of those moving ladders as well, and a little reading nook. It's going to be so cool. I'm very excited about this. Yeah,
a lot of homey touches.
Yeah, just to kind of add that charm into the place. Great. But yeah, that's probably what I'm most excited about right now.
Very exciting. Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. If somebody wants to reach out to you, get a hold of you, they could use some design advice. Where would they find you, and how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, the best way to reach out to me is through email or my phone number, and I can make that available. But you can also follow me on Instagram, follow some of my DIY, my design journey in my own home.
Awesome. So look for her on Instagram. We'll have the information there for y'all to contact her. You can touch her. Thanks so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
If you guys need somebody who needs design help or know somebody who needs some design help, whether it be in early construction phases to already moved in and living in there, reach out to Shelly and recommend her for some design work.